Come on.
Yeah.
Yes, dude. Come on. I'm right over here, dude. Come on.
You're on the field now, dude. You're on it.
Come on.
Come on.
Yes. Come on, dude.
Come on. Hello, welcome to another episode of Anatomy of the Climb.
A awesome, amazing new series where we're talking about some really cool, nifty science, anatomy, and even exercise recommendations based on techniques we see. The video we'll be talking about today is called Apple Bottom Jeans. It's a V10 in Joes Valley, Utah.
We're going to look at the FA footage actually, which is cool. So we have Griffin Whiteside FAing this, and we also have footage of myself and our friend Aiden doing it as well. So we're going to do a side-by-side comparison there, and then we're going to talk about Griffin's FA footage at the end, because his beta is actually different, and he actually originally grades it a V11 because of that.
All right, so I actually want to point out the very first move here. It looks, pretty straightforward. Both of them just go up for that big left hand. But it's actually a really important point to make about our lower trapezius. So when the arm is in this elevated position, so you can see the torso compared to the arm, it is elevated, which is going to cause upward rotation of the scapula. Whenever we get that upward rotation of the scapula, we have to create this direction of force in this kind of down and back angle. And the muscle that actually accomplishes that is the lower trapezius. So despite this looking relatively straightforward, it is an important point to make that the lower trap is super important, and it's really under-trained in a lot of climbers, and what can lead to a lot of shoulder pain and discomfort because we don't have that stability when we reach overhead. So recommended exercise here would be that D2 flexion exercise to help develop strong, healthy shoulders.
If you look at his shoulder versus my shoulder and my elbow and his elbow and his hips and everything, it's completely different body position there, which I just think is kind of interesting. I have a completely straight left arm here basically, and I'm almost sort of hanging off of my shoulders there, whereas his shoulders are more engaged, and he's actually bending his elbow a little bit more. So I think he was actually able to get more force off of his right hand there.
Yeah, but would you then say that's more or less efficient though? Because if he's having to be more engaged through all these muscles and creating that tension right off the bat, whereas you might be sitting better in this foot and a little bit straighter arm here, you may actually be saving yourself some work and some energy for the rest of the climb.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. I was thinking more from an injury or a proper technique point of view, but from an energy perspective that might actually be more efficient.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think though, from the way my shoulder and elbow is extended like that versus Aiden's. Is that less prone to injury at all?
In Aiden's position, relative to his body, that humerus isn't quite as far up, so he doesn't have as much upward rotation. He might be more dependent on the middle trapezius, because we can see that angle of force is going to be different from you. So you may have a slightly better developed lower trapezius, which allows you to feel comfortable in that position. And if he doesn't, he might be pulling in more because he can engage the rhomboids or the middle trap better because he doesn't have as much strength in his lower trap.
All right, so the next move, I get a drop knee and come into that undercling. Aiden does something very different. If you watch the video of Aiden doing this move and you listen to his breathing, which I'll play,
Come on, dude.
you can hear him let out like a as he comes into the undercling, because it requires a lot of tension the way he's using his, doing it with his foot over here and his hand up here. Whereas I do this drop knee, which is a little bit hard to see, but I have my foot like right here. Essentially, the drop knee just takes all the weight off of my right hand. It's sort of just like a right hand replacement. So Aiden's having to create so much more tension and pull so much harder in his left hand here. Whereas by doing the drop knee, I'm not putting any more pressure onto this left hand than I was when I first hit it.
Correct.
So from an energy point of view, I think this is the better beta, the drop knee.
Yeah, great energy conservation there.
Shall we move on?
Yes. Yes, you shall.
All right, so just a big move out right, and we're about to set up for a big old move here.
Look at these lines again.
Your drawings
More-
suck compared to mine.
Another overhead movement. So what muscle are we using here again?
Lower trapezius!
Lower trapezius.
I
That's
didn't
right.
need your help.
Yeah, see? Again, like it just reiterating that point, like this is a bigger move. It seems very straightforward, but having that lower trap strength to help stabilize when you hit it is going to really help your shoulders. The higher you elevate, the more overhead you are, the less stability there is in the shoulders. So you need to work on those exercises to help stabilize and prevent injuries, especially when you hit those bigger moves.
Nice glasses, by the way. You look
Thank
so
you.
smart.
I feel so smart. Hey, how's that hair doing for you too?
Don't talk about it.
The fun, awkward phases.
Yeah, when I was climbing with Alex yesterday, he said it looked like I was wearing a helmet. Okay. Foot switch.
Foot switch.
And Aiden and I both get this basically the same feet here, I believe.
Let's see.
So yeah, he goes there and there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like an obvious choice since both of you did it, but the choice to take that left foot off of the wall instead of trying to use it to stay on the wall, to generate any more like force and momentum. Like obviously both of you chose to take it off. So like, why? Tell me, explain.
We end up putting more weight onto our right foot that way. That's one of the advantages, and that's the foot that we're pushing off of to go up to that hole. I love this new pen. It's so great. That's why my drawings are so much better than Jason's. So we're both pressing off of that foot, and if we had our left foot still on there, our bodies would be like over here more. And then that's just going to lead to way more of a like pendulum swing out that way when we do go for this move up there. So it's just technique.
Especially if you think about going to the move, if your body is still over like in this region, then you're shooting up and over for that move versus, so good, versus being able to sit straight underneath it. Now you get to just go like a little bit straighter, more direct route. And that could really help depending on how that hold felt too, you know, because if you all of a sudden have that angulation change, then that maybe made that hold feel like you couldn't hold on to it. So clearly both of you sat more straight underneath it, get a more direct approach.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
A football thing.
Yeah, it does. Sports.
Touchdown.
We're in a very different body positions here. At first glance, it might look kind of similar, like we're just setting up for the move, but if you look at just our shoulder position and how high I am versus how low Aiden is, so look at like the elbow position. I'm up here and Aiden's down here, like he's below his elbow basically. So he's hanging down much more than I am, whereas I'm bending my arms more and having more tension in the upper body, kind of keeping myself up. It's a different way of setting up for the move, and you're going to see in this next little section right here how it changes the way we swing when we hit this hold, because this is one of the crux moves. I would say this is the hardest move, probably. Just a couple other hard moves. So do you want to say anything else, or should we move on?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I need to run and grab my battery charger because it's running out of battery.
One eternity later.
Whoa, bro! Watch the pen tablet. Oh! And we're back. We're setting up for the big move here, and check it out. After this pause. Passat.
Look at the faces. They're both so similar.
Are they? I don't know. Aiden looks...
I don't know. You look kind of crazy. You're like,
I have a death stare.
hold. And he just looks like he's maybe about to cry.
He's in anguish. He's straight up anguish over there.
He's like, I hate this. What am I doing?
So bad. So there's some pretty big differences in the way we're positioned right here.
We're going back to the real stuff. Gotcha.
Yeah, if we have to. Obviously, my legs are bent. Even I'm sort of flexed at the hips a little bit. It looks like engaging the core a little bit.
Yep.
Aiden's like full on extension out here. Well, he's not. He's straight.
I think that was just for dramatic effect.
Yeah. Yeah, he just wanted that flare.
Yeah.
The way he hung down on the climb and then launched up and grabbed the hold created a lot more momentum that he then had to hold, that he then caused him to swing out, and then he had to hold it, and that made him swing out a bit more, whereas I was already starting in a crouch position with the right hand very engaged, and I didn't have to pull up that high to snag that left hand and then already start slowing down my momentum a little bit quicker.
I agree with, I think you maintain that core tension better because you were already creating tension, whereas he had to throw a lot further to get to that hand. So it created a lot more momentum for him to try and control. That was so good. That was a beautiful drawing.
Amazing.
It's going to be a lot harder to control this tension here. If you wanted to work on that, you can try and do those L-sit pull-ups, because that's a great way to engage that core. And actually, it's funny, I just thought of this. I remember a long time ago, Aiden was talking about core training, and he's like, yeah, I tried one of those workouts you did where you do those L-sit pull-ups and all that stuff, and my core was super sore. So it's you may need to do some of that functional training. Maybe his core isn't that well trained in those positions because it's a little bit more novel for him. So he let his legs swing way further out rather than keeping him tucked up like you did.
Moving on here, did I stab the foot on immediately and then stabilize, and you're going to see Aiden come back, and it's going to be a little bit less controlled. So he stabs it, and he has trouble controlling the momentum because he can't get his foot to stick on.
Yeah.
And then he goes for it. And that's just, again, because he had a different technique going for it. It's not to say Aiden's an amazing climber. So once again, we're not saying that he's not a good climber, that he's weak, because he's far stronger than me in many ways. But just goes to show how just minor technical changes to your body position make such a big change to the next move and the move after that and your energy for the next move. It's crazy how such little things can add up to quite a difference.
The main thing I like to talk about this is that much straighter leg heel hook, because you're so high above yourself when you're doing that heel hook. This is an important thing when we talk about, we have that video all about the hamstrings, about how you need to have training for both that's so high up above you. You need to have more straight leg training, but you also need to have that bent leg hamstring training. We're going to notice a point later where I would recommend doing a Nordic hamstring curl for your hamstring training. But in this position with it straighter, doing that stiff leg, single leg deadlift is actually super beneficial because you're able to generate strength with that leg in a straighter position versus it being super bent, which we'll see later. And that's even part of the rehab. If you hurt yourself, you need to pay attention. Was it a heel hook like this where you're much straighter position? Or was it where you're really bent if you hurt yourself? Because that's going to be information to help diagnose an injury that you could experience. Is it going to be something where you need to train with the knee bent or with the knee straighter? So I just thought that part was super cool. I wanted to geek out about it a little bit. That's why I was like, yeah, let's go. I want to talk about it.
Yeah, that is cool. It's something that I would never think of if I had hurt my hamstring. I would personally never think, did I hurt it in a bent position or a straight position? Because that's going to affect how I rehab.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess my takeaway from that, my lesson would be that that just shows a very, very small part of the value of actually going to see a professional physical therapist or whoever you need to go see, because there's just so much detail like that you can't always get from just looking online and researching stuff.
Yeah. Not everyone is as interested in stuff like that.
Gross, get out of here.
I'll see myself out.
I'm actually glad you brought up deadlifts though. I think that's interesting because I've just started to do some deadlifting. and Aiden has as well with me. We both train at the same gym. You introduced me to deadlifting, and I've read it in the Eric Horst training book, which is an awesome book.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's not that popular for climbers to train. I think it's maybe gaining in popularity, but it doesn't seem that common. And people's reactions are a bit weird, actually. That I feel like a lot of times they maybe either don't know what a deadlift is, or they just think, oh, you're lifting heavy weights.
Yeah.
So like, why would you do that for climbing training? You're just like getting mass. One person even said the other day, like, oh, isn't that just for training legs? And I was like, no, it's definitely not just legs, but also like, what's wrong with strength training in your legs? You were going to see that later on in this video, that you actually need strength in your legs, which Aiden has better than I do, apparently. We're going to find that out. But anyways, yeah, it's interesting that deadlifts are not super well known. I feel like they're great though.
It's and honestly that's the truth. And I think there's so much that goes into it. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, deadlifts is like a quick and easy way to like hurt your back or something. And it's true. If you have terrible instruction and like terrible coaching with it, and you try and like ramp your weight up way too quickly, it can be more dangerous. But if you do it right, you have proper instruction, like it trains like your upper back, your core, and your like legs and butt, and it teaches you how to maintain that tension throughout all those body parts. And as we've talked about in like many other videos before, like there's a difference between, you know, these styles of training where you use it to get huge versus you use it to learn tension and to build strength. And there's just so much like, again, misinformation out there about it, which is why it gets such a bad rap. But not only that, we've also talked about how these big exercises like that actually improve like the upregulation of anabolic hormones, which we need to get stronger and build. Like it really is a great exercise, and we should break those bad rumors about it.
Yeah, if you guys want to see a video on deadlifting, how to do it and what the benefits are, let us know.
Yeah. Hip flexibility is important, y'all. Look at this.
So important.
That leg is up here, okay? The other one way down here.
This is such a crazy
Look at this. Here's his leg, and then here's the other one. You gotta have some hip mobility, guys. I mean, and gals. But if you don't ever work on your hip mobility, you probably will struggle with these harder and higher level grades of climbing, because your legs are super important, okay? Your legs are not just holding you down. They're not just added weight. They are super helpful for your climbing. They take a lot of strain and stress off, and you wouldn't honestly be able to do this move without it. Like, I don't think there's a way, unless you're like a V15 climber, to just match your hands here and then move over to the right. You need your legs. We have a video about hip flexibility. Watch it.
Actually. Watch it.
Live it. Love it.
So this is a fun little strong boy Aiden here. He grabs it.
I remember I was so nervous, like when he was like inching towards that. I was like, oh God, please don't blow off right now. Is now a good time to mention that I recorded both of these videos, so I'm basically
I was actually going to say how shaky and crappy these both were. It's alright, dude. You're a pro. We all know it.
Yeah.
So this one's interesting. Swing the leg over. Slightly desperate there. Aiden straight up manly mans this and just and you can see
struggle.
I'll play the original footage too, and you can hear his power scream as he does it. He's doing this move just relying purely on core and finger strength, tendons. It's another example of strength versus technique in a climb, like relying on raw strength versus relying on technique. I'll zoom in on the final video here, but you can see that my fingers are kind of bunched up and quite flexed here, almost like a half crimp, but it's a 2-finger pocket, but all my other fingers are still kind of bunched up next to it. Whereas Aiden has straight fingers here. He's totally
he's in like a
open-handing.
classic pocket position.
Yeah,
right?
what you would think of as a usual open hand pocket. I don't train pockets a lot. I don't climb on pockets a lot. And so I'm always a little bit wary with pockets. And so doing this sort of technique with the hand where I'm sort of keeping them flexed and the fingers together rather than very separated and open hand like this, it felt safer basically.
So I think like what you said is the key, and that's what I would have pointed out too, is from our other conversations, is like training pockets versus not. Like the position you're putting it in is trying to take some of the stress off of like the flexor digitorum profundus and or superficialis and use it a little bit more into like the lumbricals and kind of on the connective tissue as you're trying to kind of crimp that hold instead. Because what Aiden's doing, like bending the other fingers, we know actually does generate more strength through these if it's in the open hand position. Because we know that if you were to try and do a pocket and you kept these like here, you're not going to generate as much force, because as you try and bend, and you can see this, I'm not trying to like keep these, I am trying to keep these straight. As I bend these in, that forces those other fingers to go with it. So by doing that, I actually generate more power here, whereas keeping it here is less stress on the overall system, but not as strong. So unless you have that training to be able to go here, like you won't naturally want to do it, because you'll feel that added like injury risk to your fingers. But they have like shown that if you try and pull in and engage all those fingers when you're doing a pocket, you will be stronger, but it will feel more awkward. And if you haven't done the training at all, you are more prone to injuring that connective tissue.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that inevitably leads to a little bit of a different position here for our arms here. If you look at my arm, it's facing out here. It's actually kind of pointing out away from the wall, from the rock, whereas Aiden's is definitely pointing down more. And I think that's because he's just relying on that open hand. He's actually able to keep his whole body underneath the hold more, whereas you can see my body's like kind of up a little bit higher and over to the right more, because I'm trying to compensate for weakness in that pocket by engaging, like tensing up all my upper body muscles, trying to compensate for that weakness. So that's pretty interesting. So he actually is able to do this in a way much more easily because he has that better strength. All right, we're getting close to the end here, but there's still a lot of cool stuff to talk about. I'm just at this point trying to finagle my way into the correct position and get that heel on there. A little bit of a rest after those pockets.
So this is where I mentioned earlier, now this is the bent knee. This is where like those Nordic hamstring curls are really beneficial, because this is a lot of hamstring strength, but in a much more bent knee position.
Yeah.
So that's the dichotomy I was like, I was mentioning earlier, whereas that right leg, the super high straighter leg hamstring with that like that stiff leg or single leg deadlift versus the Nordic hamstring curl, because it's way more bent. Like awesome dichotomy between those two, and how we need to do like complete training, including training for your legs to be really good at climbing.
Shall we talk about the FA footage that we have, which is a bit different and pretty cool?
We have FA footage?
Yeah.
It's funny, like my first impression with most of this climb, the way he's doing it, is like, dang, he looks real strong. I think a lot of like the technique differences are kind of like also a strength difference, whereas like some of these moves are, I don't want to like say a little more casual for him, but you know, this is more towards like probably like more towards the upper limits of like how you guys were climbing, whereas I think for him on this, like it's probably really freaking hard still, but not at the limit of his climbing. So I think that makes a little difference in a lot of the way he does some of these movements.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Griffin Whiteside is, I think he climbs V15, maybe at least V14. I know for sure. So like this is well below his max. This video is cool because you can see some close-ups of the holds. You can see that slot is just basically a flat slot. He actually goes into a pinch here, really pinches hard on that right hand. This move, I think, is insane. Yeah, what we're about to watch.
It doesn't look possible. When you guys were trying it, I was like, "There's no way they can go that way."
Yeah, so we tried this move. Aiden and I tried to do it this way, and it just felt impossible. Which I mean, there's no doubt that I would totally, if I could do this, I would totally grade it V11, maybe even harder. Who knows?
Yeah. So that's the move. It's just going directly to the pocket versus doing that big jump out and then the heel hook up at the top.
Yeah, the way. So can you keep going? There's another angle here that shows it. There we go. So that shows he's able to create so much tension through his right hand here and his left foot, which is I think starting to come off in this frame, but before it was just pressing off the hold. So much tension through here. And that's really hard to do on this climb, because when you're at like I don't know what this is, like 40 degrees maybe, 40 degree overhang, maybe 30, I don't know. You have to not only pull up, but you have to pull yourself into the wall. And if you just have a flat edge like that, it's really hard to pull in because your hand just wants to come out. So that's why he's pinching so hard on that right hand. But it's just crazy how much tension he's able to hold on this overhang and reach all the way over his head to that left pocket.
Yeah, and that's just what I was going to point out was that where is it? Here we go. That the beta that Emil and Aiden used was going, just in case you didn't notice, they were going to that hold instead of going up to this hold.
Yes.
So that's just the difference in the beta, skipping that whole other section.
The way his arm is angled like this makes it pretty obvious that he's pulling his body into the wall as well as up because it's such an overhang. If it was just a flat face, his arm would just be straight down like that. And that's really impressive to be able to have that pulling. I guess, is he pulling him with his shoulder?
It's going to be a combination of like the whole, like the fingers are going to have to pull it through that way. The brachialis is going to have to help with the elbow flexion. The scap retractors are going to be helping, and the core is going to be helping to pull his hips closer to the wall. So it's just maintaining all that strength and tension.
Yeah, being able to pull in on a shallow pocket like that rather than just being directly below it and pulling up is quite impressive. So he goes for the heel, and he just goes straight up.
Straight up.
Because he's chilling on those pockets.
So strong.
Well, that should do it for this episode of Anatomy of the Climb.
Train, climb, send, repeat. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. And then tell everyone else to hit subscribe and that like button too. I mean, everyone, all the people, everyone you know.
Also, we just did a collaboration with Geek Climber, who just released a video recently. So go check that out. Wrist rolling.
January 10th.
Well, it's not going to be today for
2021.
them,
That's why I said the date.
Pen's falling.
Gosh.
All right.
Yeah, that was super awesome.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure working with him.
Check out that video. Also, just keep leaving feedback on these Anatomy of the Climb videos. Let us know what we can do better.
This is number 3.
Yeah. All right. Until next time. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Anatomy of the Climb.
It was so quick and short. I was like, oh, I have to talk now. Alright.
Redo.
I like it like this too. I'm gonna be like pretending like I'm not paying attention.
You never are anyways.
Like and subscribe for more super sweet vids, y'all.
So lame, dude. So lame.
I thought it was pretty good.